It's commonly believed that martial arts is a realm where opponents respect each other, even when they have to inflict physical pain. But sometimes emotions run high, and all that respect disappears. It happens. In some cases, one fighter turns out to be much stronger than their opponent and begins to openly torment them. In this video, we'll talk about 10 such instances. Cody Garbrandt versus Dominic Cruz. At his peak, Garbrandt was an incredibly charismatic fighter with almost no weaknesses, possessing reflexes of a mongoose, moving flawlessly around the octagon, and hitting like a fighter from a weight class or two above. One of his most dominant performances was undoubtedly the fight for the title against the reigning champion at the time, Dominic Cruz. The championship bout took place on December 30th, 2016 at UFC 207. The tension between the athletes was palpable even at the pre-fight press conference. This is where Cody addressed Dominic. "I would love to say something nice about myself, but nothing of the sort comes to mind." In the fight, Cruz almost couldn't do anything right. Between Cody's attacks, he had time to dance and taunt his opponent. The champion's main strength, his ability to cut angles and approach his opponent, simply didn't work here. Garbrandt was the one cutting Cruz off and punishing him. Trying to overpower the crafty challenger also didn't work. As a result, it was a dominant victory for the challenger by decision. "I've dreamed of this since I was 12, when I first started watching the UFC," the winner said after the fight, almost in tears from happiness. However, the joy didn't last long. In his next title defense, he was knocked out by TJ Dillashaw. Ian Gary versus Neil Magny. One of the freshest examples of disrespect in the octagon was the fight between Gary and Magny. The bout took place at UFC 292. It all started when, before the fight at welterweight, Neil Magny made a very controversial statement. "Beating Gary is as easy for me as spanking my kid, but it's to teach him some manners." The Irishman immediately latched onto his opponent's words. "That guy should just shut up. No one has the right to raise a hand against a child. Never. Not for discipline, not for anything else. You're a father, you have no right to treat your child like that." What Prospect did to Neil Magny was hard to watch. Even in the first round, he kicked out his opponent's lead leg and continuously landed low kicks on it. The entire time, the fighter accompanied it with taunts and shouts. "Come on, kid!" And overall, Gary seemed to do absolutely everything against Magny. After the fight, he showed his opponent an obscene gesture. "I just wanted to put him in his place. I had just become a father myself and felt like I was the protector of this little being. I stood on the side of justice." It's worth noting that no specific evidence was presented to show that Magny ever hit his son. Max Holloway versus Calvin Kattar Max can teach anyone a lesson in striking technique. Unless, of course, your name is Alex and you're from Australia. For instance, in his fight with Brian Ortega, the athlete literally taught his opponent how to strike properly. But the most memorable performance from the Blessed One came in his bout with Calvin Kattar. There was an interesting backstory to this fight. At the time of his matchup with Holloway, many experts considered Kattar to be the best, or one of the best, boxers in the UFC, and the athlete was indeed very skilled with his hands. However, during the fight, Holloway decided to show who the real boss was. Their bout took place on January 16th, 2021, at UFC on ABC1. The first two rounds went in Max's favor, but Kattar had his moments as well. However, from the third round onward, it became a rout. Max was landing more strikes and hitting more often, turning his opponent's face into a bloody mask. But in the fifth round, Holloway outdid himself. Almost not allowing Kattar to land any shots, he repeatedly smashed his fists into Calvin's head, landing every punch he desired. "I'm the best boxer in the UFC," he shouted to his opponent's corner, turning away from Kattar, who was desperately trying to land anything on Max. In the end, Kattar somehow made it to the decision. It was here that Max set his incredible record. He managed to land 445 significant strikes on his opponent. Calvin's comment after the fight, "Max Holloway is just a beast. If you're not a fan of him, you're just a hater. I hope he gets a title shot." And unfortunately for Max, he did get that title shot. Alex Volkanovski versus Max Holloway. After several dominant performances in a row, Max found himself facing his longtime rival, Volkanovski. The Australian held the featherweight title, which he took from the Blessed One in their first encounter. On July 2nd, 2022, the third meeting between these fighters took place. Usually, Max has no trouble landing shots on his opponent. While he lacks a knockout punch, the volume of his strikes compensates for that. Holloway can throw as many punches as he wants. Sooner or later, the opponent either falls from the accumulated damage or loses a lopsided decision. However, with Volkanovski, Such tactics don't work. The first two bouts between Max and Alex were close. Both times Volkanovski won because he found a way to land more strikes on Max than he took himself. At the same time, Alex fought at the peak of his abilities, and his second win over the Hawaiian still raises questions. Before their most recent meeting, many believed Max could finally win. But how wrong they were. Volkanovski entered the fight in the best shape of his life. Max was still himself, but he simply couldn't keep up with his opponent, who was working off his breaths and delivering significant damage. Volkanovski's comment to Max in the first round, "Too fast, huh?" To Holloway's credit, he managed to defend against all of Volkanovski's takedowns during the fight, or else he wouldn't have lasted until the end. Max did hear the bell, but everyone who watched the fight knew it was a rout. I'm not going to make excuses. I went in there and believed I could do it, but it didn't happen. The opponent was just better that night, but I still look good. Nevertheless, he's just a man. Everyone has their day, and that day was his. We'll move forward and see what happens. Even so, Max still considers himself the better fighter compared to Volkanovski. Max's comment, "Otherwise, I wouldn't be fighting in the same weight class as him." Zelim Imadaev versus Michel Pereira. This is one of those instances where the conflict in the octagon stemmed from something crystal clear at the weigh-in, and Imadaev slapped his opponent. Pereira didn't respond at the time, but he certainly didn't forget the incident. The fight took place at UFC Fight Night 176 in September 2020. It quickly became clear in the octagon that Michel was significantly superior to Imadaev in striking technique. The Brazilian held nothing back, landing showtime kicks, making faces, while Zelim clearly felt tense, unable to find the right distance. The cherry on top came at the end of the third round, when Pereira decided he had played enough with his opponent, took him down to the canvas, and choked him out. Pereira's comment after the fight, "I don't know why he slapped me at the weigh-in, but I told him I'd get him back, and I did it in the fight. I showed him my hand, kissed it, and slapped him to make sure he understood that's not how you behave. When I was executing the submission, I didn't realize when he tapped, but the position was very tight. He either tapped out or would have passed out." This loss became Zelim's third in the UFC, and it was also his last fight in the organization, and so far, the last of his career. Michael Page versus Ben Dishman. Michael Venom Page is one of the most talented strikers of modern times. He has won 12 medals of various kinds in world-class kickboxing and karate competitions. In 2012, the athlete transitioned to MMA to earn more. His first fight, scheduled in the UCMMA organization, was short and disappointing for his opponent, Ben Dishman. For the poor guy, it was his first and last MMA fight, and the event took place at the organization's 26th tournament in February 2012. The fight began with Dishman attempting to clinch his opponent. Page defended well and hit his opponent with a knee to the body. From a distance, he began to dance with his elbows, and sometimes he simply froze in place, almost inviting his opponent to attack. Dishman tried to close the distance, but Venom backed up faster than his opponent could move forward. At the end of the first minute, Michael began to work. He landed a solid low kick and then hit a tornado kick, a jumping strike with a 180-degree spin. That was enough for Dishman to be unable to continue. The entire fight lasted just over a minute. It's worth noting that Page performed similar tricks even against tougher opponents, like in Bellator. The athlete could dance, intentionally look in a different direction, freeze in place, and still remain out of reach for most of his rivals. "I started dancing because just fighting is boring to me," the fighter said. But for every technical striker, there is an antidote. The first kryptonite for the Brit was Douglas Lima, whom Page couldn't tear apart. The Brazilian was able to punish Michael for his recklessness and take him down while standing. The second athlete to defeat Venom was Logan Storley, whose wrestling skills were enough to overcome his opponent. Now Page has signed a contract with the UFC and will face Kevin Holland at UFC 299. Let's see if he will keep the show going in the octagon. Israel Adesanya versus Paulo Costa Costa is a renowned trash talker who was once a promising middleweight in the UFC. After victories over Uriah Hall and Yoel Romero, the athlete earned a chance to fight Adesanya, and Izzy was set to defend his title for the second time. Costa's comment, "Even after I knock him out, I won't shake his hand. That would be crazy. I'm sure I'll knock him out in the second round because in the first, he'll be running a lot, but I won't wait like Romero did. I'll hunt him down in the cage, close the distance, and strike him in the face and body." Izzy wasn't going to let that slide. I have this overinflated balloon in front of me, a pumped-up Ricky Martin impersonator. Don't even think about stepping in here. This is my octagon. When I'm done with him, he'll really look like Ricky Martin, just beaten up. The fight took place at UFC 253 in August 2020. Costa did try to pressure Adesanya and land powerful punches, but he struggled. Israel didn't let him land clean shots. The difference in class became apparent by the second round. By this time, Adesanya had damaged Costa's leg, figured him out, and by the end of the round, caught him with a left hook to the head. After that, the champion finished off his opponent and allowed himself an act of disrespect in his post-fight comment, hinting at a potential rematch. I didn't see it when I was on the stool in the cage, but I watched it later. I absolutely condemn it. For me, it's not over yet. No one is going to stop me. No one can. I'm coming for Adesanya. I want a rematch, and you know I'm waiting for you. But by 2024, the athlete still hadn't reached the rematch with Izzy. Jon Jones versus Daniel Cormier. Perhaps these are two of the greatest fighters in UFC history who fought each other. Both are champions in two weight classes, leaving a lasting impact on MMA history. It would have made sense if their fights had been close. But in reality, Jones dominated both encounters. Their first fight took place back in 2015. Cormier came to the UFC as a heavyweight, but after some time, he moved to light heavyweight. The Louisiana wrestler did this so he wouldn't have to fight his friend and teammate, heavyweight champion Cain Velasquez. After a couple of warm-up fights, UFC management decided that, based on his achievements in two weight classes, Cormier deserved a title shot. Both fighters were confident in their victory, and the conflict between them was almost inevitable. At the weigh-in, Jon and Daniel nearly got into a fight. It's not to say that their first fight was a one-sided beating of Cormier. DC had some successful moments when he got inside on Jon, but overall, Jones was able to do much more. For example, he easily took his opponent to the ground, and Bones won the fight by decision, but reconciliation didn't follow. Jones's comment: "He says he's great, but he's not. I hope he earns the right to come back, and I'll beat him again." Cormier was indeed very upset, but he earned the right to come back. Moreover, he claimed the vacant championship title at that time. In the octagon, Jones was unbeatable, but outside of it, he had issues. Johnny was suspended after leaving the scene of an accident he caused. The fight following his match with Cormier took place more than a year later. In 2016, after defeating Ovince St. Preux, Jones again faced Daniel. This time, the reigning champion was determined to win. From the start, he was much more aggressive than in their first encounter. Johnny took advantage of this and threw strikes in return. Until the end of the third round, the fight was going back and forth. But with Jones, you can never relax. He threw a high kick and landed it. DC was rocked, and it was no trouble for Bones to finish him off. In his post-fight interview, Cormier was literally in tears. "I don't even know what happened. The fight seemed to be going fine. It was a head kick, right? I'm really disappointed," he told Joe Rogan. However, Jones didn't celebrate for long either. The fight was overturned after banned substances were found in his blood. Now, the relationship between the fighters has never been repaired, although Jones tried to make amends. Perhaps in the future, things will improve. Jorge Masvidal versus Ben Askren. This was one of the shortest fights in UFC history. The controversial striker with a high number of knockouts faced the notoriously boring wrestler. However, few doubted the victory of the latter. Askren's career peak came in the early 2010 years. At that time, he was the dominant Bellator welterweight champion. Askren didn't have great striking or dangerous jiu-jitsu, but he was an excellent wrestler, which allowed him to break down the entire top of the organization's 77-kilogram division. The athlete used his blanket style more than 100%. In 2014, Askren moved to ONE FC, where he also dominated, but he really wanted to be in the UFC. He made his way to Dana White's promotion in 2019. Through a rather interesting path, he was traded. Demetrius Johnson went to ONE, and Ben moved from Asia to the UFC. In the world's best league, he managed to finish Robbie Lawler. He entered the fight with Masvidal, boasting a record of 19 wins and no losses. Masvidal was considered the underdog, but he didn't hold back in his trash talk. "I want to break Ben's face for personal reasons. I want to hurt him, but not just knock him out. I want to beat him up as long as I can. I'll hit him without holding back, then let him recover a bit before hitting him again, until I knock him out completely." Well, Ben wasn't holding back either. Askren's comments on social media: "15 minutes will be more than enough for me to take care of this guy once and for all." The fight took place at UFC 239 on July 6, 2019. The bout began and ended immediately. Askren attempted to shoot for Masvidal's legs and ran straight into a flying knee. The encounter lasted 5 seconds, and the knockout became one of the most memorable in UFC history. After the knockout, Jorge taunted his opponent. "I don't remember anything from what happened in the cage. I only remember that it was me and Masvidal in the octagon. I don't remember the knee. I came to full consciousness only in the hospital. I woke up, they turned on the TV where the Jones vs. Santos fight was still going on. Then I realized what a mess it was. I lost to Masvidal today," Ben explained, after everything that happened. However, one thing you can't deny about the former member of the US freestyle wrestling team is his self-deprecating humor. On the other hand, in terms of the ratio of work time to pay, I was the best that night. Who else earned $200,000 in 5 seconds? Anderson Silva versus Demian Maia Silva is one of the greatest fighters in MMA history. With incredible talent, he often didn't feel the need to show even the slightest respect to his opponent. For example, he humiliated Forrest Griffin in a mocking manner, and his antics in the fight with Chris Weidman backfired on Silva himself. The fighter lost by knockout and permanently lost his championship belt. But the most controversial performance from the Brazilian came in his fight with fellow countryman Demian Maia. Maia earned a title shot after Vitor Belfort couldn't step into the octagon with Silva due to an injury. The Brazilian jiu-jitsu master had no chance against Spider, and they were right, but what Anderson did spoiled the title defense. Throughout the fight, Silva taunted and shouted insults at Demian. In the first 2 rounds, he still tried to knock out his opponent with sharp attacks, but then he relaxed and started enjoying himself. Maia's key to victory was in the ground game, but he couldn't get Silva there. The champion easily defended against takedowns and spent the last 3 rounds throwing low kicks and jabs. As a result, he won by unanimous decision. Maia's comments: "He dominated the second round and half of the third. I couldn't shake the thoughts. Is it me, or can I not win? I'm definitely getting knocked out now." For the first time in my career, I had to admit that I couldn't figure out how to approach my opponent. After the fight, Silva tried to justify himself by saying that his opponent had been insulting him before the match, but those around him didn't really understand what he was talking about. However, the insult to Anderson was perfectly clear to the Portuguese fans. He called Demian a playboy. In Brazil, that term refers to guys who achieve everything through their parents. But Maia was definitely not like that. Like Silva himself, he came from a poor family. This was all unexpected because we had met several times and had many mutual friends. Every time we saw each other, we politely exchanged pleasantries, so I was quite surprised when he started insulting me like that.